Good evening and welcome to our news at 9 p.m. I am Martin Peter Odhach. And now to the headlines. President William Ruto now calls on the parents to teach their children against what he terms as misuse of the internet. The Kenyan youth now takes on the center stage in holding the government to account. The Los Angeles fire still continues to spread across even as the containment measures are being implemented. Welcome. President William Ruto has called on the parents to teach their children against what he terms as misuse of the internet. This comes amidst the online criticism of the government by the youth, branded as the Gen Z.
Sisi tunataka hawa watoto wetu tuwafundishe vizuri. Nyinyi kama wazazi, tafadhali nawauliza. Na nasema hivyo mimi mwenyewe nikiwa mzazi. Tuchunge watoto wetu wasiharibiwe na bad character, bad mentorship. Watu ambao kuna wengine wanachochea hawa watoto wetu. Ati wanachochea hawa watoto ati endesheni matusi. Wewe ni mzazi wa aina gani? Wewe ni kiongozi mwenye akili aina gani? Ati unawachochea watoto wetu waendeshe matusi, waendeshe mambo mabaya, waendeshe tabia mbaya. Mimi nawauliza kama wazazi, let us look after our children. Waswahili wanasema asiyefunzwa na mama yake atakuja kufunzwa na hawa wanasiasa wa tabia mbaya wa kusema watoto wetu watukanane.
The online criticism has seen the return of abductions and enforced disappearance of government critics, which some political leaders link to the government, even as the DCI and the police unit deny being responsible for such acts.
Abduction and arrest, formal arrest by a police officer, you see, is part of the duty of a police officer to arrest an offender, but not to abduct an offender. So those who abduct, they commit crimes. And those crimes are ordinarily presented before a court of law for a judge to decide on that.
Political leaders allied to President William Samoei Ruto have come out wagons defending the president against the overgrowing criticism of the government in both political rallies and even in the internet. Speaking during a church service attended by the president, among other leaders in Lang'ata constituency, Nairobi, the Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja defended Ruto by comparing him to former presidents whom he said could not deliver in 60 years what is demanded of President Ruto in 2 years. The Nairobi Governor went ahead saying that the tough criticism is because Kenyans believe the president is a hard worker.
14 years, hiyo barabara hakuna. Wa pili 24 years, Rais Moi hawakumuuliza. Watatu Kibaki miaka 10 na ni wa hapo hawakumuuliza. Wa nne President Uhuru Kenyatta 10 years hawakumuuliza. Sasa hizi Ruto 2 years mnataka kuwa umetengeneza hiyo barabara shwali. Simpatie time ngangane nayo 2 years out of a 60-year problem. I think we've been very unfair on you, Your Excellency. But you know why? It is because Kenyans know you. Wewe ni mchapakazi. Much is given, much is expected. So your pressure is because you know you're a performer. We've seen you in the Ministry of Agriculture. We've seen you in the Ministry of Education.
The Dagoretti North Member of Parliament, Beatrice Elachi, also threw support to the president against the criticism by asking those who are not contented with the government to leave the country to a better place.
Ni lazima tutengeneze airport, Mheshimiwa Rais. Nimekuwa huko juzi, wageni wakitoka US, madaktari. Watu wamejaa nje. Walikuwa wanaondoka na wengine wanaingia. Wale wanaingia wanasema Kenya is a good country. Na Mkenya hako hapo sahi anasema hii Kenya, hii ni na hapotei. Kama Kenya ni mbaya usipotee. Ukote. Kenya mbaya unafanya nini hapa? Mahali mbaya. Potea.
There has risen a new phase of opposition in Kenya, mainly planned and executed by the youth. Unlike the norm, where the government has always been held accountable by the minority side of the parliament, the Kenyan youth, a wave known as Gen Z, has risen to be the main critique of the government. This kind of criticism, which is largely exercised in the internet, has seen the Gen Zs become creative and active in condemning and calling the government to action. The Gen Zs do this through revealing various government white elephant and stalled projects, use of silhouettes depicting the political class, and even conducting one of the largest demonstrations witnessed in the country, which led to the first overhaul of President William Ruto's government. The Gen Z system of criticism has seen the rise in limelight abductions, enforced disappearances, arrests, and even killings of some of the critics, but they seem not to bow, as such arrests and abductions even leads to the rise of more and more criticism and uproar from the Kenyans. Be in uniform or meet the uninformed. The police in plain clothes are now facing harsh crowd in their attempt to carry out arrest. In two similar instances that occurred in Nakuru and Kirinyaga, the police who showed up in plain clothes in order to carry out arrest faced mobs which stood on their grounds against any arrest by plainclothes officers whom they see as abductors, even as the wave of abduction keeps rising in the country. The two instances have now seen the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, through its boss, come out and give a stern warning against such attacks, saying that it is a serious criminal offense. And still on the politics tonight, we ask, is the government becoming too hot even to the cold-blooded? The head of government delivery services, Peter Mbai, today rendered his resignation, citing unfavorable working conditions and unresolved issues. This comes barely a day after the Public Service Cabinet Secretary Justin Muturi, serving under the same government, boldly came out and spoke against the same government on matters abduction, which is seen as the most rampant vice in the country. CS Muturi condemned the government on abductions, including that of his own son that happened around the last part of last year, saying that up to now he has not gotten any reason as to why his son was abducted.
And all the young people being held in illegal captivity should immediately be freed. I'm fully aware of the doctrine of collective responsibility of cabinet. But since I'm also a victim of the abductions and serving in this government, I've not gotten any answers as to why my son was abducted, held in Communicado, and nobody gave any reasons for that abduction. I have taken this unusual step so that the matter of abductions and or extrajudicial activities being committed by whomever can now be honestly and robustly debated in the country with a view to finding a lasting solution to this scourge.
The Gachagua stance. Tonight, we bring you a special report on the turn of events for a man who was once President Ruto's strongest supporter and now his most fierce critic, the man Rigathi Gachagua. The Gachagua stance. In the campaigns for the 2022 State House race, even before he was landed on for the Deputy President position by the then Deputy President William Ruto, Gachagua stood out as Ruto's strongest mountain supporter and defender, landing him a position of the mountain point man. It is in this race that saw Mr. Gachagua drive the mountain down the valley. Him, among other the then strong mountain leaders, abandoned the mountain political party, the Jubilee Party, headed by the then President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, to the United Democratic Alliance Party, UDA, formed by Deputy President William Ruto, with an aim to succeed his boss President Kenyatta, who had then abandoned him for the opposition leader Raila Odinga in the State House race. It even became a bonfire when Mr. Gachagua was finally landed on as the UDA deputy president in the race to the State House. Just as a bulldog to the owner, Gachagua instantly attacked any critique of Deputy President Ruto without a second thought, as that was his main strength. Who clearly felt Mr. Gachagua's heat was the then President Kenyatta. Gachagua, who was the man listened to by the mountain, climbed every level of the mountain, deconstructing President Kenyatta, calling him all sorts of names. The vows were exchanged, the marriage was sweet. In the demonstration by the Azimio leaders in rejection of the 2022 general election results, Deputy Gachagua seemed a little commander. His boss, President Ruto, had then become a darling to the plains. Barely could he spend a night in his country, Kenya. He had a flying squad and used to fly across the world in flock. Or, we could say, he relocated his office to the plains and worked best there. It is at this moment that Mr. Gachagua tasted power, and perhaps to him, opportunity came once but for a period, and he utilized it to the best of his ability. Then came the Gen Z protest in rejection of the Finance Bill 2024, which they termed as punitive. Mr. Gachagua supported the bill with no listening ear to the critics. On the 25th June 2024, when the bill was being passed in Parliament, the protest grew hotter. The protest, which was witnessed countrywide, brought a mammoth into the capital city, and in a hot battle with the police, they managed to get into the Parliament, mainly to stop the bill from being enacted into law. These were simply Kenyan youths, but to Gachagua and the government, it was criminal. No marriage sails smoothly, as in the waters there must be waves. It started as a speculation, and with the government, it is never true until it is said not to be true. At some point, it started raining on Mr. Gachagua. The waves grew to tides. With the reshuffling of President Ruto's cabinet, occasioned by the persistent Gen Z protest and overgrowing criticism that saw the inclusion of the opposition leaders to the cabinet, Mr. Gachagua started to exit the stage. On 26 June 2024, Mr. Gachagua did the unheard. He went ahead and held a parallel press briefing in Mombasa, just a day after President Ruto had held a press release on the 25th when the Gen Zs stormed the parliament, a clear show of broken bonds. Since then, the blame games shifted. Gachagua planned a coup during the protests. The battle went on to a successful impeachment of Mr. Gachagua. Perhaps Uhuru was right. President Ruto isn't a good man. Not my words, but if you read Mr. Gachagua carefully, he is now the protector of the Gen Zs who fled the city's streets to the internet streets against his once darling President Ruto. Mr. Gachagua is now hinting at forming a mountain political party that through coalition will unseat President Ruto in the 2027 presidential race. The Multimedia University of Kenya is almost hitting its political peak with its election scheduled to be held in a few months' time. The election for the entire student leadership position, which is to be held in the month of March this year, has seen students interested in different positions hit the road, carrying out campaigns day and night in order to safeguard their interest. The institution has always seen frequent student demonstration in demand of their right. Could it be as a result of too much demands, too weak student council, or unlistening administration? And could this election work towards the solution? And now to international news. The US President Joe Biden has given the federal government's response to the California fires. Speaking during a briefing attended by the President, Vice President Kamala Harris, and other administration officials, Biden said he is still continuing to direct the federal government to do everything possible to help California. The Los Angeles fire that started days ago, which its cause still remains unknown, has quickly spread to California and other parts, with the spread still feared to be fueled by unexpected strong winds. According to the reports, 24 people have lost their lives in California, 16 others missing, and hundreds of families displaced due to the ravaging fires, and our heart goes to the families of the 24 lost lives. And to sports news. The Kenya Premier League is set to resume on Wednesday this week, with rescheduled matches set to kick off. The first match, that will be between Kenya Police and Posta Rangers, will kick off on Wednesday at Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos, followed by Tusker FC and Bandari FC, thereafter with a series of other games lined up for the weekends. The Red Devils showed the Gunners fire after thrashing them 6-4. The tough game that ended full-time at 1-1, so the teams proceed to penalties, where Man United scored 5 goals against Arsenal's 4, bringing the total scores to 6-4. And that brings us to the end of our news tonight. Thank you for keeping it at TPTV.